Okay, so welcome back to this channel. So now in this video we will see that how we can use TypeORM in our NestJs API. Okay, so this is an empty NestJs application I have just created right now. If I go back to my Chrome, you can see that here this is the documentation of NestJs. And if I go here in the let's say in the techniques in the database, so you can see that here this is the complete documentation for using database with TypeORM. So if you don't know, I have a complete NestJs series on how to build API in NestJs. So I have used MongoDB and Mongoose to manage my database. You can watch those videos. Okay, I have discussed about authentication, authorization, role-based authentication, and unit testing, E2E testing. Okay, API security and all that stuff. You can watch those videos. I will add the link of that playlist in the resource of this video. You can simply check that. And now in this video we will see that how we can use TypeORM. So you can see that here for integrating SQL and NoSQL database, NestJs provide this NestJs TypeORM. And remember that TypeORM is not only used with SQL databases, we can also use that with NoSQL databases like MongoDB. Okay, but most of the time it is used with SQL database like MySQL or Postgres. Okay, and you can see that here TypeORM is the most mature object relational mapper available for TypeScript. Since it's written in TypeScript, it integrates well with the Nest framework because Nest framework is in TypeScript. So in this video, I will use TypeORM with Postgres. Okay, and you can use MySQL or any other database that you want. Okay, so first thing first, we have to install TypeORM itself and then NestJs/TypeORM and then the database. So we are not using MySQL, we will use Postgres. So we will install that. So I will simply install these two packages. So copy it from here, go back and let's install these packages. And after that we have to go in our app.module.ts. In that we can use this TypeORM module from NestJs/TypeORM. And we just have to pass in here the type, the name of the database, the host, port, username, password, database name, entities that we will discuss in a minute. And then we will set this synchronize option, and we don't have to set that in the production. We have to remove that. You can see that here. Shouldn't be used in production, otherwise you can lose production data. So it is only for development. So now what I will do is I will actually copy this TypeORM module, this one, and we also write our code for MongoDB. If I open that Mongo new tab, we also write that in this app.module, but with this Mongoose module .for root and pass in our MongoDB connection string. But now we are using SQL database like Postgres, so we will use TypeORM. So I go back and then I go in the source app.module.ts, and then here I can put that code, and we have to import this module from NestJs/TypeORM. Okay, we have to install these packages. Okay, so packages are installed successfully and then the warning is gone. So TypeORM.for root, in that we have to first of all type the type, and that is going to be Postgres in our case because we are using Postgres inside of MySQL. And then the host is going to be localhost, port is going to be, and if I open my Postgres app from here, and you also have to install the Postgres in your computer, simply go to Google and install Postgres on your Windows, Mac or Linux machine, because you need to set up a database in your computer. So I am using Mac, so I have this Postgres SQL software, and you can see that it is running on port 5432. So I will use here 5432 port, and then the username, password and the name of the database. So name of the database, let's say, is going to be TypeORM-books-API. So let's create this database. I copy it from here, copy that, and now you have to also install a software that is called pgadmin. So it is just like a GUI of Postgres that help us to manage our database, like we have MongoDB Compass for MongoDB database. So after installing that, simply go to the servers. Then we have in here localhost. Now we have to create in here database. So I click in here, create database. Name of the database is going to be TypeORM Books API, and then the owner is going to be this default user, that is going to be this Postgres. You can also create your user if you want, but I will use this default Postgres. So username is going to be Postgres and password is going to be root, which is the default password. So click on save. So now you can see that this database is created, so database connected. And now if I go back, I can type in here the username, that is going to be Postgres, and the password is going to be root. We don't have any entities right now. Entities are just like models of our resources, like book entity, user entity, like we have a model in MongoDB. Okay, so now let's run our application. I type here npm run start dev. Okay, so now it will start my application, and let's see if we get connected to database. You can see that here we get this error that Postgres package not found. We have to install this pg package. So I copy it from here, and let's install this pg package, that is Postgres. So we will install that, and then we will start our server again. So I will start the server again, and now I hope so. You can see that found 0 error, and now we are connected to our Postgres database. If I type in here wrong username and password, it will throw the error that role Postgres does not exist. So we have to pass in here correct one. Okay, so now we are successfully connected to our Postgres database with our TypeORM module. And now let's create our entities. Again, entities are just like models of our resources. So let me create here two modules. One is going to be book and one is going to be user. So I will type here NestJ module, that is going to be book. Okay, and then the second module, that is going to be user. So we have in here source, we have book, and then we have in here user. Now let's create the controller and services file for these modules. So first of all, NestJ controller. Let's create controller for book. Let's enter. So it will create the controller, then the controller for user like this. Okay, and then we have to create the service file. So that is going to be service for user and then service for book. Okay, so now we have created all the files. Let me remove this testing file because we will not use that in this video. So I will delete, and for the user I will also delete these files. Okay, so now we have our two modules, book, user, with our module file, service file, and then the controller file. Okay, so now let's create our first entity, that is going to be book entity. So I go in the book, create a new file in here that is called book.entity.ts. So in that we can write our entity. If I go back to my Chrome, if I scroll down, you can see that here we can create our entity like this. So it is just like the user model. So we can define our columns here like ID of the user, first name, last name, is active, or any other value. And we have to use this entity decorator and then create a class with the name of that entity. So let's go back and let's use that. First of all, that is going to be entity. We have to import that from TypeORM, and then let's export a class with the name book that contains all the fields. Okay, so now from here, first of all, I need ID of the user, book, that is going to be number. And for the decorator, I will use in here at primary column, primary generated column, that will basically, and if I save it, now you can see that we have here first column that is going to be ID, which is the primary generated column that will basically automatically handle the ID of the entity. Okay, you can also pass in here like UUID if you want to use UUID for UID. I will use that. Okay, and then I will use in here my second column, define my second column in here, that is going to be column, and that is going to be, let's say, title of the book, that is going to be string, and that is it. This is our simple book entity in which you have the ID of the book and then the title of the book, that is going to be string. You can define more if you want. And for the primary generated column, I will use this UUID as the ID. Now it will automatically generate the ID for this record in our database. This is also going to be our primary key. We know that the ID is always going to be our primary key. So now we have defined our entity. Now we have to just use that in our app.module.ts. In the entities, I will use in here book and import that from book.entity. Okay, so now we have created our first entity. Now let's create our first route that will get all the books from the database. First of all, we know that in NestJs we have to register our models or our entities in our basically module. So I go in the book.module.ts, and then here in the imports I have to use that. So I will use here import array, and then in that I can use my TypeORM module. So TypeORM module dot for feature, and in that we can pass in here our entity. And if I go back, you can see that here we can use this TypeORM dot for feature, in that we can pass in our entity. So that is going to be a for feature, and the entity is going to be book like this. And now we have added the book entity also in our book module. Now let's go to our book.service.ts, and let's first of all inject our repository here. and then we will find all the books. And if you have watched my previous videos on NestJs, we know that in MongoDB we inject our model, user model, but in TypeORM we inject our repository. So let me show you that. First of all, let's define our constructor for this class, and we know that here we define our or we inject our models or repository. So I will use here at inject repository, and we have to import that from NestJs TypeORM. So in that we have to pass in here the entity. You can see that here the entity is going to be book. Okay, and then we are going to create a private instance here. So private, that will only be accessible in this class. I hope that you know about object oriented programming. So private book repository, that is going to be repository, and we have to pass in here the type, that is going to be book entity, like this. Okay, so we have successfully injected our book repository in here. Now we can use this book repository to send the request to the database to find the books, create a new book, delete or update any book. So after injecting that, in MongoDB we inject our models. Now we can create our first function in here, that is going to be find all. Okay, and let's say it is going to return here this dot book repository dot find. So that will find all the books in the database and give us back. That is going to be find all. Now to use that, we have to go in our book.controller.ts, and the path is going to be slash localhost port 3000 slash books. Okay, now in that we have to inject our book service, and then we can call this function that will return back all the books. So again we have to define here our constructor of this class. In that we will inject our service. So I will create instance in here, private instance for the book service, that is going to be book service, and we have to import the book service from /book service. So now we have injected or we have added the book service in our controller file. Now we can use this book service instance to access all these functions. Okay, so I can simply type in here after constructor. First of all, it is going to be a get request, so I will use here at get decorator from nestjs/common, and after that I can simply define in here my async get all books function, that is going to get all the books. So for that I will use return this dot book service dot get all books, and that is actually find all. Now we will call this function, and that will find all the books from the database and return us back. To test it, I will simply run my server, so npm start dev, and now let's go to our postman, and if I send the request to this endpoint, click on send, you can see that here we get here empty array because we don't have any book in the database. Now let's create a route to create book and save that in the database. So first of all, let's go in our book service where we have injected our repository. Now let's create a new function here that will create and save the book in the database. So I will type in here create. In the create we will pass the book that we want to create, that is going to be book DTO, and remember that we also have to create our DTOs. So if you don't know, DTO is a data transfer object that is used for validation. Okay, so let me create that first. In the book I create a new folder with the name DTO. In DTO I will create book.dto.ts, and I have a detailed video on all these DTOs and basics. You can watch that. In simple word, DTO stands for data transfer object, and we can validate our user input with the help of these DTOs. So I can simply export in here a class with the name create book DTO, and that is going to contain only one field, that is going to be is not empty, and we have to also use this decorator, that is going to be title, which is going to be string. Okay, so that is going to be is not empty, and we have to get that from a package that is going to be class validator. So npm I class validator dash save. Okay, so we can get this is not empty decorator from our class validator package like this, and we have bunch of decorators like is email, is optional. You can use that if you want. Okay, so now we only have this field which is title, so we have typed here that it should not be empty. This is a create book DTO, and I can use that right in here. So this book DTO is going to be this. Okay, so it will make sure that user is passing the correct data, and after the book and that is going to actually return a promise, and that is going to be book. Okay, so in that we can write our code, and it is also going to return a promise that is going to be array of books like this. Okay, so now in this, first of all, we have to const book is going to be this dot book repository dot create. In the create we can pass in here the book DTO. Now after that we can simply return from here this dot book repository dot save, and that will save the book in the database. Okay, so now we can simply create and save the book in database. Let's go back to our book controller and define here a route that is going to be add post, that is going to be async create book, and in that we can simply call the function that is going to be return this dot book service dot create, and in that we have to pass in here the book DTO, which is the input of the user. And we know that the input of the user is in the body, so we can get the body from here with the add body decorator, and that is going to be body, and the that is going to be body, and the type is going to be create book DTO like this. Okay, so now let's test it out. I simply start my server. Now let's go back, and I will copy it from here, put that here. That is going to be post in the body row JSON. Let's pass in here the title. So title is going to be, let's say, dummy book. If I click on send, so you can see that we get back our book. And now if I send the request to this route, you can see that here we get array of the books, that is going to be this. And you can see that here it is using the UUID instead of 1, 2 or 3. Okay, so we are getting back our books, and we are also saving the books in the database. And if I go to my PG admin, I can go here in the schemas, in the tables. You can see that here we have this book table, and let's explore the rows. You can see that here we have this table, and we have our first record, that is the ID, which is the primary key. We are using UUID, and this is the title that contains dummy book. In the same way we can create more books if we want. If I type in here 2 send, now we have here 2 books. Okay, so now let's move on and create our third route to find the book by ID. So what I can do in here is I can simply go close this create book DTO, go to book service.ts, and then here we can create our third basically, that is find one, which is going to be string. Okay, that is going to return back the book, and we will use this dot book repository dot find one by, and in that we have to pass in here the ID like this. Okay, and then that is going to be a number. Okay, I can simply type in here const book, and then we can simply check here that if not book, we can simply return back the error message that throw new not found exception. In that we can pass book not found. Okay, else we will return back the book. Okay, then I go back in here, and let's create our third basically route to get all the books like this. Okay, so we will use this param decorator to get our ID of the book. Okay, then we will pass that in find one like this. Now to test that, I simply go back, let's copy it from here, go here, let's use this ID to get this dummy book, copy that, slash this, send, and now we get back here this book. If I type in here like wrong ID, it will throw back actually that is a string, that is not a number. So I can simply type here that it is going to be a string. We will pass in here that is going to be a string. Okay, and we have here this error that it is not a number. So for that I go to my entity, and that is going to be string. Simply save it, and now that is it. So now if I go back, click on send, if I go back in here, I can type in here log what is this book, save it, and now let's go back, click on send, that is pending, and we have to actually type in here await. Okay, and that is going to be async function like this. Okay, So now if I go back, click on send, you can see that here we get the message that book not found. Okay, so in this way we can use that. And make sure to use here find one, that is going to be a string because we are using UUID, so that is going to be actually a string, not a number. Okay, so after find by ID, find one, we also have update and delete. So I will simply type that here, that is going to be remove, and I can also check here like this, that if find the book, if book not found, simply return this error, otherwise remove the book. And then also I have in here the update book, so async update. Okay, in that we will write our code that will update it. Okay, so first of all we will get the ID of the book that we want to update, then book DTO, and that is going to update book DTO, and I will define that in a minute. After that we will find the book, if not found we will throw this error, otherwise we will use this function dot update. And actually what I do is I will remove this code from here. Let me type here that object dot assign, so I will assign this book DTO, which is the new book, to this book. Okay, and then I will simply type in here return this dot book repository dot save and save this book. And I will go in the DTO, create a new file that is going to be update dash book dot DTO dot ts. Okay, so I will simply copy it from here and I put that here, and that is going to be is optional, like this. Save it, and I will remove this from here, and that is going to be update. Okay, so now let's import this. Simply save it, and this is our update and this is our remove. So now let's use that in our book controller. So after this get, we have to define our put, and then we have to put in here our code for the update book, like this. And let's uncomment this one. First of all, we have to import this put decorator from NestJs /common, and then we also have to import in here update book DTO. So we will get the ID from the param. So param ID, that is going to be this ID, which is the string. From the body we will get our body, that is going to be update book DTO. Then we will pass that in the update function from this book service. In the same way, we are going to have in here our delete decorator, in which from where we will get our ID, and we will pass that to this remove. Okay, and then simply save it from here, and that is it. Now let's test these routes. So I can simply copy it from here, put that, and that is going to be put, and in the body row let's update the title. So that is going to be title, let's say updated book. So if I click on send, you can see that book not found, that is I think so E. Okay, so this is the ID, so I will use this ID, that is going to be E. So click on send. Now you can see that the book is updated. So if I get back the details of the book, now the book is updated. In the same way we can delete this book. So I copy it from here, go back, delete, paste the URL and send, and now the book is gone. And if I search it again, so book not found. So in this way we can use update and delete also. So now we are done with our first resource, that is book. We are creating book, updating, deleting and getting all the books. Now let's handle the user part, and let's see how we can manage the relationship between our book and user. Okay, so I simply close it from here, go to my user, create a new file in here that is going to be user.entity.ts. And just to save some time, I will go back to my Chrome and I will use the book entity from here. So let me copy that, and I will simply copy this code from here, copy, and I will go back and I put that in here. So I don't need here this photo. I will add this one-to-many relationship later. So let's say I have in here the ID, that is going to be number, then the name of the user, and then let's say we have the email of the user, and then we have here the password of the user. Okay, and that is going to be string, not boolean. So I will remove it from here. Okay, so this is going to be my simple user entity, and now we have to go in our app.module, and here we also have to add the user entity like this. Okay, and then we will go here in the book.module.ts, and here in imports we also have to add the user entity. So I will actually copy that from here, which is this one. In this way we will add in here the user entity and this TypeORM module. Let's import that. Okay, so now we have created our entity, and now let's create our controller and then the service file. So we have in here service file. So I will create here two functions. One is to create user and one is to find all users. So we know that in this service, first of all, we have to inject our repository. So let's inject that in the constructor. So I will type in here constructor, and in the constructor I will simply inject my repository. So I will type in here at inject repository. So we will import the repository. In that we have to pass here the entity, that is going to be user, and then private instance, that is going to be user repository. We will import the repository and pass in here the user. So now we can use this user repository to create and find all the users. So I will type in here that create. So in the create we will pass in here let's say name, email, and then the password. So I will type here name string. Okay, and then we are going to have in here the email, that is going to be string, then the password, that is going to be string, and it is going to return back a promise, that is going to be the user. Okay, now in here we can simply create our user. So const user is going to be this dot user repository dot create, pass in here name, email, and then the password, and then I will simply return from here this dot user repository user repository dot save, and that will save the user like this. Okay, so now we have in here some issue. And we have to actually remove these brackets from here. We don't need these. Okay, simply save it, and this is our create, that will create the user and save in the database. And then we have this find all. Okay, and that is going to return an array of the users. So here I will return all the users like this. Now if I simply, let's remove this inject, save it. Now let's go to the user controller, and let's first of all add here our create instance of our service file. So that is going to be private user service, that is going to be user service. Okay, and then we can create in here the basically functions or routes to get all the users and create the users. So I will type in here that is going to be users, and then first of all get route. Okay, and that is going to be get all users like this. Okay, in the same way I have here the post route to create the user, and from here I will simply pass in here in the create the, let's say, name, email, and then the password like this. And now we have to get this password from the body, so we'll get the body from here. So add body, and that is going to be body, and let's not type here any type. You can add the new user DTO, but I will keep it as it is. Simply save it, and that is it. So let's create the user, and then we will understand how we can add the relationship between books and the users. So I go back to the Postman, and what I do is I will simply create a new tab, that is going to be users, send request, no user found. So now let's create the user, that is going to be body row JSON. Let's add in here user data. Okay, so now if I click on send from here, you can see that oops, I have to enter in here slash users, and that is a post. Okay, so now if I click on send, so now this user is created with this ID. Now you can see that we haven't used UUID for the user. We have used just number, so I get here 1. Okay, if I go back, I get here 1. So now if I send to request this, now I get here all users. Now I am sure that you can write other routes to update, delete, or find user by ID. So now let's understand how we can manage our relationship between book and then the user. We know that we have different type of relationship, like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one. Now we know that a user can have many books and many books can have one user. So we have to establish this relationship that a user can have multiple books and multiple books can have one user. So if I go back to my Chrome, and here we have these relationships, where it is here. This is the relations. You can see that here we have one to one, one to many, many to one, and many to many. So now we are interested in one to many and many to one because one user can have multiple books and multiple books can have one user. So for that we have to use this one to many decorator and many to one decorator. Okay, so let's first of all go back to our book entity. So book entity.ts, and now here we have to define our relationship. Now we know that one user can have multiple books. So for that I will use here add many to one relationship. I will import that. Okay, so many book can have one user, but in this many to one, first of all we have to pass in here the a target entity. Okay, so the target entity, we know that that is user, so that is going to be a function that will return the entity which is going to be user. So we will import the user entity like this. So the first argument is that we have to pass in here the target entity, and then we have to pass in here a function that takes an instance of target entity. Okay, and return back the target entity field. For example, I go here, I have in here the target entity instance, that is the user. Now from here we have to return the property of the target entity, and that is going to be user dot books. Okay, and then we can put in here user, that is going to be the user entity. Okay, simply save it. Now we have to also define this books field in our user.entity. We also have to create a relationship in here. So one user can have multiple books, so I will type in here one to many, like one user can have many books. First of all we have to enter in here the target entity, and that is going to be, we know that book entity. Okay, and after that we have to pass in here the field of the target entity, and know that in this case the target field entity is going to be book.user, and then I will type in here books, that is going to be an array of book like this. Okay, that is books. Okay, so now let's add the user while creating the book, and let's see what will happen. If I go to the book.service or book.controller.ts, so here we are passing the book. So in a complete application we usually get the user from the request, because we implement the authentication, save the user in the token, and then we can get the user from the request. But at this moment we don't have any authentication or authorization, so let's pass in here hard-coded user. Okay, it is just to show you the relationship. I can simply type in here let's go back to the postman. I can copy this from here and can use that. Okay, but again in a real application we will get this user from the request. Okay, and then in the body I can pass the user. In the create, sorry, in the create I will have the book DTO, and then the user, that is going to be any, and then we can pass in here first of all whatever in the book DTO, and then the user. Simply save it from here, and let's save it also from here. Okay, so now let's test it out. I simply go back, I have this book. Let's also delete it from here and create new book from scratch. So I will put that in here, send. So I have no book left. So let's create the book, this dummy book. If I click on send, so the book is created. Now you can see that we have the ID, we have the title, and then the user that has created that book. You can see that in here. Okay, and now if I go to the database to show you, let me go to pgadmin, and let's get the here again. Now you can see that here we have the ID of the book, title of the book, and then the user ID that has created that book, that is going to be this one. Now if I click on user and let's get the data, you can see that now we have in here this user that has created this book, this one. So now we have established the relationship between the user and the book. Now before closing this video, let's also discuss about subscribers, that how we can use subscribers to hash this password. We know that we are basically saving this password as it is in our database. You can see that here. If I can show you, I am saving it as it is. Now if you want to encrypt this password before saving that, we can use subscribers. In MongoDB we use pre function where we can basically run our code before saving the document and encrypt our password. In the same way we can use subscriber to basically perform some task before saving this record in the database. So if I go back to my Chrome, here you can see that we have the subscribers. You can see that we can define in here our subscriber, user subscriber, that will implement this entity subscriber interface. Okay, we have this constructor, and then it will listen to this user entity, and then before inserting the record in the database, we can encrypt our password. So what I will do is I will copy this code from here just to save some time. Copy that, go back, then I can go here in the user. I can create a new basically folder subscribers. In that, let's create a new file that is called user.subscriber.ts, and in that we can write this code. Okay, and we have to get the user from /or user entity. Okay, so we have to get this data source and all these from this TypeORM, and then we can create in here user subscriber that implements this interface. Okay, and then we have this constructor, and then we will listen to our user entity, and then we have here before insert, and in before insert we can simply encrypt our password. Just like before insert, we also have in here before remove and before update. You can use whatever you want to use, but in this case we will encrypt the password. So what I will do is I will get the user, so const that is going to be this event.entity, so that is going to be the current user. Then we have to encrypt the password, so I type here const hashed password, and I will use a package that is called bcrypt.js that encrypts the password. So npm i bcrypt.js dash save, and let's import that. So I'm going to import all as bcrypt from bcrypt.js. Okay, and then I can use this package to encrypt my password. So I simply type in here bcrypt.hashsync. In that I can pass in the user password and then the salt value that is going to be 10. So this is the hash password. Then we can simply set to the user. So user.password is going to be that hash password. Simply save it, and now we can use that. So before using that, actually we have to go in the user.module.ts, and we also have to, in the providers, we have to use that. So that is going to be user subscriber. We also have to add that in here. Simply save it, and now let's run the application and check it out. So I will start my application. Now let's go back. We have the error. Invalid controller has been detected, user subscriber. We have to provide that in the providers, not basically controller, right here. Simply save it, and now it is fine. Okay, so now let's go back to the Postman and register a new user like John Doe 2. If I click on send, so now you can see that the password is hashed. Now if I go to the database in the pgadmin, refresh, now you have in here this user that has encrypted password, and we also get in here before user inserted this user. Okay, so in this way we can also use subscribers to perform some actions before saving the user, updating or deleting, whatever you want to perform. You can perform that with the subscribers. So that's it for this video. We have covered all the basics of TypeORM with NestJs by building a simple books API in which we have performed CRUD operations. We have understood the relationships, how we can establish or make relationship between user and the books, and also we have at the end discussed about the subscribers. So that's it for this video. If you want more videos on NestJs, please do let me know in the comment section. You can also give your suggestion. I will try my best to create videos on those topics. So that's it. You can find the source code of this video in the description of this video. I will add the Git repo link. So that's it. I will see you in some other video.